In addition, we do several volunteer projects, and our biggest project this year is called Replenish. We were inspired by this project because there was another senior who reached out to me and said, "This is really cool, you should do it." A Harvard student actually started a project where throughout local high schools, nationwide high schools, they go around and they lead these tree planting projects based on the number of paper that gets wasted at schools every year. So our school wastes about 21,000 reams of paper, which is why we were inspired to do this project, because that's a lot of paper. For some reason, there's an echo, but okay, I think it went away. So our goal this year was to plant 300 trees, and I'm very proud to say that a few weeks ago, we just reached that goal with 300 tree purchases. On 4/24, we're gonna have a community-wide event where members who order trees are gonna come to East High School to pick it up. It's gonna be COVID safe, and we're also gonna have East student volunteers go out into neighborhoods to deliver and plant the trees to residents. So we thought that this was a really great way to bring the community together and plant trees. A little bit more about the Youth Sustainability Board. It's a coalition of about over 100 students from 18 high schools across Colorado. It was actually only founded 2 years ago by a Denver University student, and she was inspired by the work that she did while in high school. In the Youth Sustainability Board, all the different members are able to share resources about sustainability, and our big project this year is trying to pass a DPS resolution. What that is we're going to go to the Denver Public Schools Board to address this resolution, and the main things we're asking for are to Denver Public Schools to use 100% clean electricity by 2030 in accordance with Denver's renewable electricity plan, and to reduce overall greenhouse gas emissions by at least 90% by 2050 in accordance with Colorado's climate action plan. Furthermore, we want to transition from using primarily diesel buses in the district to more to electrical buses, and start composting and recycling programs at every DPS school, which is 200 plus schools. So hopefully by the end of this school year, we'll be able to present that to the Denver Public Schools Board and get that passed. So yeah, that's a little bit about what I'm doing and what the Youth Sustainability Board is doing. If you know of any students in the Youth Sustainability Board, or if actually you know of any students that are younger than 18, they can actually participate in a scavenger hunt that we have. I will send the link in the chat right now for the scavenger hunt, and you can also learn more about the DPS resolution. There's a little tab on the right side called DPS resolution where you can sign up for updates about how that's going. And yeah, we'd encourage all kids to participate in the scavenger hunt so they can learn a little bit more about sustainability and everything. So again, thank you so much for providing the time for me to speak here today. And I will keep you updated about how it goes with the resolution before the end of the school year.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And I'm so happy that you made your goal. Hopefully some of the people that received the notice from LUN contact you and bought some trees. But anyway, this is exciting, and I'll definitely pass some of this information on to my grandkids who are in school. Okay, let's see. Jonathan. Jonathan, are you here? Jonathan Rogers?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Okay, all right, great. Let me just introduce you. Jonathan Rogers is the Renewable Energy Specialist of the Denver Office of Climate Action, Sustainability and Resiliency. He spoke to us first on December 2nd about the proposed solar panel project on the site of the Lowry Tennis Courts. The proposal was supported by Lowry neighbors and has been approved, and Jonathan's here tonight to give us an update on the project.
Thanks so much for having me back, Kathy, and great to see everyone again. First, I'll just say Youth Sustainability Board is a fantastic organization. I'm actually participating in a volunteer event with them this Sunday, talking to students about clean energy and hopefully, inspiring them to continue to do the great work they do and maybe someday come work for Denver's climate office. So keep it up, Kendall. That's awesome. Great to hear about the work that you all are doing. So at the Lowry Tennis Courts, really exciting that we continue to make progress on the site planning and system design for the covered parking with solar panels and electric vehicle chargers. We ended up being approved by Xcel Energy for 9 projects across Denver. Very fortunate that we were able to make the Lowry Tennis Courts one of them. There'll be 3 other rec centers that we pursue the covered parking with solar panels. Those will be Central Park Rec Center, the Montbello Rec Center, and the Harvard Gulch Rec Center. Next week, I believe, is when we have scheduled work with our contractors and the facilities team to drill some holes in the parking lot, get soil samples, make sure we know what foundations need to be put in place so that we can come up with the designs and the structural drawings that are needed. Over the coming months, I hope to come back and talk to you more and actually show you drawings for how are these going to look, where exactly are they going to be located, are there any planned closures or disruptions to parking, all of that stuff we're trying to minimize and make this as smooth as possible. Right now, tentatively targeting a kind of break ground date for construction in the 4th quarter of this year, so likely around October, November. But we'll see. There's a lot of permitting. There's a lot of administrative work that we're going through right now. And hopefully that all continues to go smoothly so that we can get these built and generating clean power as soon as possible. For those who are unfamiliar with this program, it's a new initiative from the city of Denver. And the concept is that we have a lot of wasted solar potential in the city, areas where the sun is just beating down on blacktops and contributing to heat island effects, and we're not capturing that resource productively. So in this program, we can actually use these solar panels to capture that electricity. A portion of the power goes back and helps us save money on powering our rec centers and other parks facilities. And 20% of the power is actually allocated back to low-income housing and low-income residents, helping to save money on the energy bills of the people who are struggling the most. As we build the projects, we have a workforce training program, so we'll actually be working with a local nonprofit to help provide job opportunities to local Denverites who are underemployed or looking for new opportunities for work. And we actually have a partnership with Denver Public Schools as well. I'll have an intern joining my team in June, and we're working with teachers to create coursework and classroom activities so that they can learn about our solar projects and just why clean energy is important and better connect students to clean energy opportunities. As we look towards 2021's community solar program cycle with Xcel Energy, we're actually in close conversations with Denver Public Schools to try to identify some of their parking lots where we can also help to advance their clean energy goals, connect families that are on free and reduced lunch programs to that lower cost power, and get more of these projects built in the future. So really exciting things happening. I appreciate all of your partnership in helping to be a host for one of these projects. And I look forward to continuing to give you updates over the course of this year as we move closer towards project construction and completion. I'll stop there if folks have any questions that I can answer and leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. I'm excited. Hope we'll hear back from you later this year about progress and how we can get involved more in this project. Okay. Are there any questions? Looks like we're good. So keep me in the loop as far as the progress and what that groundbreaking date looks like as you get closer, and I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Sounds great. I will talk to you all later. Have a great night. And I
Okay.
put my email in the chat in case anybody wants to reach out to me directly. Always happy to talk.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Okay, so Jasmin Barco has been working really hard with us to plan this meeting. She's put in a lot of time, and we're really lucky to have her. Jasmin's the outreach coordinator with Eco-Cycle. Eco-Cycle was established in 1976 and is leading the charge on the Front Range in educating and building zero waste communities. Eco-Cycle is one of the largest nonprofit recyclers in the US and has an international reputation as a pioneer in resource conservation. So Jasmin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kathy. Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and let's start talking trash. Let's see here. Okay, cool. So thanks, Kathy, for introducing Eco-Cycle a little bit. They started in 1976 through a group of volunteers who saw the need for zero waste services in their community. So they actually bought school buses and drove those school buses around, picking up everyone's recyclables. Now, over 40 years later, we actually have recycled trucks, or like trash, or like dumpster trucks. I don't know what they're called, waste trucks, where we pick up recycling and composting. So we started one of the first curbside compost pickup services as well. We do a lot of education in Boulder County schools with our Green Star schools. We do a ton of zero waste events, and I'm a part of the campaigns department, which actually goes over to the state legislature a lot. And we actually have a Zero Waste Denver campaign, which we will learn a little bit more about later. So here's our brief agenda. We're going to talk about zero waste in the circular economy. We're going to do a quick recycling review. We're going to dive into plastics. We'll talk about current policies and different calls to actions that you can do. So let's dive right in with zero waste in the circular economy. Have you ever asked yourself, where does this come from? An aluminum can, for example, comes from a mineral called bauxite ore. But in order for us to even get bauxite ore, we have to do something that's called surface mining. And this is the impact that surface mining has on our landscape. We have to cut down trees and dig over acres of land. 4 to 7 tons of this bauxite ore is equal to 1 ton of aluminum. With glass, it comes from silica sand. And in order to get silica sand, we have to do something called open pit mining. And paper, thankfully, everyone knows it comes from trees. But once you have the trees, you make it into this pulp. And the pulp then becomes a new paper item. So every time paper gets recycled, it gets made back into this pulp. And then the cool thing about paper is that it can be recycled 5 to 7 times. Each time it gets made into the pulp, its fibers get shorter and shorter, meaning the material gets weaker and weaker. So it can start off strong like a cardboard box and go into something like a white office paper, then the newspaper. But by the end of its life cycle, it'll always be a paper towel, tissue, or napkin. And by that point, you probably got it dirty with something, and it's best to compost it instead. So 42, oh, does anyone see that red line here? Or is it just me?
Yep.
Okay, I have no idea how that happened, but I guess let's just go with it. So 42% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from our consumption emissions. And that is all of the extracting, refining, transporting, consuming, and disposing of all of our stuff. So all of our stuff has a big impact on our overall environment. But the thing about recycling is that recycling is equal to saved energy. So instead of cutting down a bunch of trees and doing surface mining to mine for bauxite ore, and imagine all the energy that it takes to convert a rock into something as we know and love it as aluminum metal, we can just melt that can, that aluminum that we already have in our economy and make it into a brand new can again. So when you melt it instead, or when you recycle it, you're saving about 92% of the energy than going and extracting, mining, transporting, refining. So it definitely makes a lot more sense to recycle instead. So you can see here it's the same for other metals. And for glass is actually 74% of the energy saved when you melt the glass bottle and make it into a new bottle again. So that's the cool thing about metals and glass, is that it can be recycled indefinitely without losing any properties. It can be made from a can to another can an infinite amount of times. So right now what we have is a linear economy, and that is where we take things from the environment, we make things, and then we get rid of it. We throw it out. And throwing out here in Colorado really means burying. So we bury all of our waste here, versus a circular economy, where we reuse and repair and have infrastructure for reuse and repair, where we compost and use that compost to grow new food, which then goes to our local supermarkets, where we have effective recycling systems and end markets, so that our materials don't have to go halfway around the world. We have infrastructure here locally to take in the materials, melt it and make it into something new again, and go back into our grocery stores. That is a circular economy. So what is zero waste? Zero waste is refusing, reusing, recycling, composting, and participating in hard to recycle materials. So taking like your yoga mats or appliances, electronics, mattresses, bike parts, even scrap metal is considered a hard to recycle material, to a hard to recycle center. And hazardous waste. Boulder County has an amazing hazardous waste facility where anyone can come in and take things for free as well. So you can take free paint and spray paint as well that people drop off. They also drop off a lot of cleaning chemicals to the hazardous waste center. So zero waste creates jobs. It helps keep materials out of the landfill. It keeps money in our local economy. It conserves natural resources. But one of the most important things that zero waste does is that it combats climate change. How? Well, it saves energy. As we saw from the graph, 92% of the energy is saved when you recycle an aluminum can versus make it from its virgin source. It reduces landfill emissions. Some people don't know this, but when you send organic material to the landfill and you bury it, it decomposes without oxygen. So it's anaerobic decomposition, which actually creates methane gas, which is 84 times stronger than carbon dioxide. And when we compost our organic waste instead, we're creating healthy soils. And these healthy soils actually have the ability to sequester carbon from the atmosphere. So it's the cheapest technology that we have to help combat climate change, all with composting. So let's do a brief recycling review. And sorry, this red line isn't going away. I have no idea how it got there. But where does it go? So trash goes here to the Denver Arapahoe disposal site. And that's actually the 5th largest landfill in the nation at over 2,300 acres. It has a projected lifespan of 100 more years. It on average costs $16 to $20 to bury 1 ton of waste at the Denver Arapahoe disposal site. And it's $45 in the mountainous areas of Colorado where land is more precious. And in the East Coast and West Coast, it's on average like $50 to bury 1 ton of waste. And in places like Europe, where there is no more land to bury waste, it's often like $150 to bury 1 ton of waste. So you could get an idea for the economics there as to why we're not better at recycling. We have 4 recycling facilities along the Front Range. There's one in Boulder that's owned and operated by owned by the people, so Boulder County, and operated by Eco-Cycle. There are 2 recycling facilities in Denver and one in Colorado Springs. Those are all privately owned by Waste Management, Green for Life, or Best Way Recycling. The compost facility is over at A1 Organics. It's 45 minutes northeast from the Denver metro area. And the compost heaps reach up to temperatures of 150 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's why you can put meat, bone, and dairy into your curbside compost bins. So how does it work? With landfilling, there are large trucks full of all of everything that you've ever put in the trash and everything your neighbors have put in the trash and everything anyone has ever put in the trash. And it essentially gets made into a trash mountain. So here's please mute yourselves too. I just muted that person so we could not have any background noise. But anyways, so yeah, here's a drawing. Usually there will be a clay layer and a plastic layer. The plastic layer is as thick as a credit card. There will be a drainage layer and a collection pipe. The collection pipe can collect leachate, which is essentially trash juice, and try to sequester some methane as well, since methane is being created in these trash mountains. Every day, trash will be covered by dirt. It used to be covered by glass, but we'll talk about why that's no longer the case. So there are these machines with spikes on their wheels, and their main job is to compact all of the trash as much as possible. Then it gets covered with daily dirt. The problem with landfills is that they're big. They're literally mountains of trash and the land's always moving. So sometimes the pipes and collection pipes can break. And therefore there's a stat out there that says out of the lifespan of a landfill, only around 20% of methane is captured. And landfills will often say, no, we capture methane and it's enough to fuel 300,000 homes a year or something like that. But it could be more if we use a biogas facility, which we actually have one. It's 55 minutes northeast from the Denver metro area. And this is a biogas facility in La Salle, Colorado, Heartland Biogas Facility. It's sadly shut down, and it's been shut down for the past 3 or 4 years because of some technical thing. Like some people complained about the smell, so they shut it down and implemented new technologies or like new screens to help with the smell. But unfortunately, before they were up and running again, like I think their name was slightly off in 2 different pieces of documents, and so it's just been in limbo. They were recently bought out by someone else, purchased by Platte River Biogas. So they're hoping to reopen it with county permission. But again, I think they were shut down in the first place because of the county, because of 10 pissed off people saying that it smells too much. And this is a critical piece of our organic waste infrastructure. There were dairy waste, like dairy cow poop coming over here. If not, like the second or like the most popular way to get rid of dairy poop or cow poop is to make these like poop lagoons, and that emits a ton of methane, as you can imagine. But when it's all coming here, there was different expired food from grocery stores coming here. There was some organic waste from the Purina factory here. It all basically is in this enclosed metal area, and the gas then goes through these like cylinders and then somehow gets put back into the energy grid, which is pretty cool. But unfortunately, it's been shut down, but fingers crossed it opens up soon. So 5 things to keep out of the landfill are electronics and paint. There's actually a ban at the landfill for these things, and anything that can be recycled, composted, or reused. Because when you're sending things to the landfill or when you're throwing them away, you're really burying it forever. So this is a recycling facility, or in the industry, materials recovery facility, or MRF. And this is the Boulder County Recycling Center. And this recycling center is special and different than the other 3 that we have in the state, because it focuses on education. Since it's owned by the people of the county of Boulder and paid through by taxpayer money, this entire building is focused on education. And so it has a lot of different diagrams around, like, where do our things come from? What does a landfill look like a section of a landfill? What should you put in your recycle bin? What should you keep out of your recycle bin? And so we have a lot of school groups that come through and get the tour of the recycling facility after they're done watching an educational video and looking through all of the cool diagrams that we have. They'll go through this tunnel, and this itself is where the machine is housed. So since we have single stream recycling, that means we have one bin where we put everything, and then it goes to a machine to separate everything for us. This is a video of an optical sorter. So there are lasers on this side of the machine that shoot out into the conveyor belt, which is this, to see what kind of material something is based on the reflectivity that it gets back. Based on that reflectivity, it will signal an air jet on this side to blow a material out and into a different stream or let the material go through. So I believe this one is looking for number 1 PETE plastic bottles. And then this one's looking for milk jugs, or like a different kind of like number 2 plastics, HDPE. Don't quote me on that. One of those is looking for PET, the other one's looking for HDPE. We also have different technologies like an eddy current separator. So aluminum by itself is not magnetic. So we need 2 magnets that work against each other to create a current so that aluminum can be flung off into a different area of the machine. We do use magnets for steel and tin cans. Optical sorters can also be used for other plastics and glass and even cartons. And we have screens to take out paper and cardboard. We do have people that work at these facilities at the MRFs, and their main job is to remove the contaminants. So the things that can harm the machine, the things that should not be there. One time I toured it and I saw like a football player padding in the recycle stream. Another time I saw like a barbell from like a workout thing. Like, yes, it's metal. Yes, it can be melted indefinitely, but no, you can't put it in your single stream recycling because it's too big. And even something as small as a wire hanger can mess up the machine. And you can imagine this machine costs millions of dollars. So we want to keep it working well and alive as long as we can. Recycling creates 9 times the jobs in landfills, which is pretty cool. One time I toured the landfill and asked the person who worked there, like, hey, what do you think about recycling? And he said he loved it. And he wishes more people recycled because it ensures that he has a job for a longer period of time, which I thought was a very interesting answer. So top 5 things to recycle, I would say glass. It's the first closed loop in Colorado. It doesn't have to leave the state. And I'll talk a little bit more about glass in the next slide. Aluminum, because it says 92% of the energy, not 95% of the energy when it's recycled. Cardboard, because it can be recycled 5 to 7 more times. Cartons, so like these are your milk cartons, juice cartons, broth cartons. That's actually one of the best examples of producer responsibility that we have. So especially in these broth cartons, if you look at the bottom of it, you'll see a label that's called Tetra Pak. And normally people wouldn't think that these cartons are recyclable because the inside has an aluminum layer, then it's followed by a carton layer, then it's all enclosed in like this plastic layer. But the reason that it's recyclable is because the 5 or 6 carton producers came together with a common goal of making their product recyclable. So they thought about how they could do that, and they realized that in order for their product to be recyclable, they should not put any adhesives onto all of the different materials to kind of keep the materials together. Instead, they stamped it. That's why you'll see this kind of like seam alongside your broth cartons or juice cartons, because they themselves actually buy it back and they themselves recycle it, which I think is really cool. Cans is definitely another big thing to recycle. Steel and tin, again, is metal and can be recycled indefinitely. or infinitely. I keep saying indefinitely, infinitely. So here's the glass story. It goes from your household to the recycling center. Now, it used to be that it would go straight from the recycling center to the landfill. Why? Because the mounds of glass did not look like glass at all. It was a pile of gray, gross, dirty, full of tiny plastic pieces, full of tiny shredded paper pieces, mound. It did not look like glass. Until this company called Momentum Recycling from Salt Lake City came to Colorado and opened in Broomfield. Their facility is another big machine that washes and dries the glass and uses a bunch of optical sorters to separate it into a mound of clear glass, a mound of green glass, and a mound of amber glass. And so since they clean it, dry it, and separate it by color, they can then sell it to Rocky Mountain Bottling, which is in Wheat Ridge. It's another huge machine that takes all of those glass cutlets, melts it, and makes it into new bottles again. We have a second bottling company too called Owens, Illinois in Greeley, Colorado. So glass gets sold to one of those two bottling manufacturers, which melts the cutlet, makes it into new bottles, and then it goes back to your grocery store shelves in as soon as 60 days. So that is called an end market, meaning the material doesn't have to leave the state. It all stays here in the states, in the Colorado state, creating local jobs. So I've got a question for you all that if you want to take yourself off of mute or write it in the chat, what is Colorado's second closed loop? Does anyone know or want to shout it out?
Aluminum cans.
Paper.
Aluminum can. That's a good one.
Paper.
Ooh, paper. Nice. Okay, one more.
Plastic.
All right, thank you for your thoughts. Colorado's second closed loop is compost.
Oh.
So in a lot of places in Denver, you can opt in for a green compost cart. It will then go to A1 Organics to be made into compost, and then you can buy compost back at Ace Hardware under Denver's own EcoGrow compost. So this spring, instead of going to Home Depot or Lowe's and buying compost from who knows where it came from, go to Ace Hardware instead and support Denver's own EcoGrow, because it's made with your materials that you put here in the green cart and get sent to A1 Organics, and you can then help close the loop. Also, save the date, May 1st. Denver is having a mulch giveaway and a compost sale. You can learn more about it at denvergov.org/mulch. So in 2017, the city of Denver did a waste analysis of what went to the landfill for 7 units and below. So households, residential households in Denver. And they saw that 50% of what went to the landfill could have been composted. So it could have been made into healthy soil. 25% could have been recycled, and only 25% should have been buried. And we see here the neighborhood participation. So your council district, Council District 5, is actually tied for first place. So this is out of 100% of the Denver residents, single family home residents, how many are participating in the compost service. And District 5 is over at 25 or 21% participation, tied for first place along with Chris Herndon's district. And Lowry is over at 20%, but there's still quite a ways to go to catch up to South Park Hill, who is the #1 neighborhood in compost participation right now. They are at 42%. So the top 5 things to compost are food waste and yard waste, paper towels, tissues, and napkins, because they can't be recycled. It's too weak to recycle, and it's probably dirty. Meat, bone, and dairy can definitely go into your commercial compost bin, and clean wood products like popsicle sticks or chopsticks can definitely go in the industrial compost too. So let's dive into plastics. Where does it come from? Does anyone know? Does anyone want to like shout it out again?
Petroleum.
Yeah, Yay. Okay, I'm glad because a lot of people don't know where plastic comes from. It does come from petroleum. It comes from oil and gas byproduct. So the oil and gas industry, instead of responsibly disposing of their fossil fuel waste products, they instead invested a lot of money into research on how to turn it into a new product. And this new product, through a lot of chemistry, was used to create an array of materials like toothbrushes, tires, fabrics, etc. The history of plastics really starts to jump off in the 1950s with a buy more plastic messaging, because really before 1940s, there really was no plastic in the economy or in the environment. So in 54, the US started to have disposable packaging laws. However, the plastics industry are masters at shifting the blame and shifting the conversation and said, no, it's not us, the producers, it's the consumers. They're littering too much, and we have to do an education campaign so that they stop littering so much. In 75, they somehow convinced municipalities to run taxpayer-funded recycling programs. Again, they are deflecting the responsibility from the products that they create and they put forth into the world and saying, okay, well, people, you guys have to decide how to deal with it. Municipalities, you have to decide how to deal with it. So they really started to urge municipalities to run taxpayer-funded recycling programs. Somehow that worked. And by the 90s, plastic quadrupled. The industry continue to fight restrictions on disposables and continue to promote municipally funded recycling. In 2005, things got even worse, a lot faster because of the US Energy Policy Act, which had exemptions on health and environmental regulations. So there was a big shale gas boom, which increased plastic production. And in 2015, it's probably another like nail on the coffin, the 40-year-old ban on shale exports was lifted, which increased production even more. And the world's largest plastic manufacturing facility opened with billions of dollars in tax breaks and subsidies, as if they needed it. The current projections are that if nothing changes, plastic production is expected to quadruple in 30 years. The oil and gas industry is putting billions of dollars of investment into producing more plastic. Why? Because we're shifting towards renewable energy and they want to maintain their income and their growth projections. There's currently 60% fish in the ocean and 40% plastic, according to some folks, but I think it's more when you account for microplastics, which we will also talk about. So this is an image from this film, The Story of Plastic. If you haven't seen it, I don't know if I recommend it. I mean, it's nice, but I left so angry. So it's not one of those documentaries that leaves you with hope. If you want to watch a documentary that leaves you with hope, watch Kiss the Ground or The Biggest Little Farm. Those are great. But this one, I was so sad and devastated and angry. But this man works in California, and he was pointing out the different plastic bales. And he said that it's so hard to sell these plastic bales because, as you can see, there's different kinds of plastics. There's hard plastics, there's film plastics, there's different colors of plastics. Some are printed on, some are not. There's 7+ different kinds of chemical compositions of plastics. And there's even a difference between clear plastics to make it harder. And so actually I have a first poll question for you. If it has a recycle symbol, it can be recycled, true or false? Okay, we've had about half of the people so far vote. And it just jumped up to 75% of the people here voting.
That's a tricky question because we all know that not all of it can be.
Well, let's see the results here. 65% of the folks said false, 35% said true. Can you see the results? Okay. Now you can see the results. Okay, cool. Let's see here. It is actually false. So here is the recycle symbol created in 1970 by Gary Anderson. This was actually at a competition and just for recycling, and he won with the chasing arrows symbol versus the resin identification code, which was created in 1988 by the plastics industry. So really they just took the chasing arrow design for recyclability and put a number in the middle. The number in the middle is what kind of resin or what kind of chemical composition a plastic is. So a lot of people are sadly brainwashed to think that if it has a recycle symbol, it could be recycled, but that's not the case. It's really like the plastics industry that got really sneaky and said, okay, we're going to take this symbol that's like universally recyclable and just stick a number in the middle. And that's going to be the resin identification code, which has nothing to do with whether something is recyclable or not. So that's just a form of greenwashing. I've got another poll question. Let's see. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how I can poll or launch the second one. Uh-oh. Oh, here we go. 2 seconds. All right. What plastic items can be recycled in your single stream recycling? Click all that applies. So we have wrappers, bottles, jugs, jars, cutlery, tubs as plastic options. Again, what plastic items can be recycled in your single stream recycling? Again, single stream recycling is you get one bin or cart, you put all of the materials in there, and then it's up to the machine to sort it for you.
Jasmin,
Oh, it says polling is closed. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I did that by accident. I thought I was submitting my results, so you might want to relaunch it.
Okay.
I didn't mean to close it.
Did it relaunch? Okay. It relaunched, but everyone who voted before your votes went away. So please vote again. Thank you.
Damn you, Chris.
All right, and we have around 75% participation of those who have voted. And I am going to end the polling and share the results. So most folks have said that bottles can be recycled. A few said wrappers, most said jugs and jars, a few said cutlery, and most said tubs. So let's see here. We always say bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. So please, if you come out with anything from this PowerPoint presentation, it's that when it comes to plastics recycling, bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars, wrappers and cutlery, like wrappers are way too thin. And you saw how fast the conveyor belts were going. A lot of like winds and gusts are kind of created at the recycling machine. Wrappers will just fly off. Same with like plastic bags. They will fly off and gunk up the machine. So we have to shut down the machine twice a day only to cut all of the plastic bags out from the machine's gears. And as you can imagine, it's extremely inefficient. And then with cutlery, it's just so small. It'll literally fall in between the cracks. That's why you don't have like straws. Straws are not recyclable. It will literally fall in between the cracks. Now, if it's like, if there's a collection for straws only, a separate collection that's not in the single stream, then maybe it could be recycled, but we're talking about single stream here. You have to think it goes to a huge machine. It's not going to make it through to find its other like items. So plastics recyclers actually prefer plastics that actually have markets are 1s, 2s, and 5s. If we have to get technical with the numbers, So not getting technical with numbers, it's bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. Getting technical, it's ones, twos, and fives. And that is because the ones, twos, and fives get made into these different things. So ones get made into other bottles, carpet, or textiles. Twos get made into things like drainage pipes, and fives get made into things like plastic paint cans and automotive parts. But there is a warning here with plastics number 1, textiles, and that is microfibers and microplastics. So there was a professor from the Colorado School of Mines that did a study on rainwater and found out that we have microfibers in our rainwater, the water that was pouring on Rocky Mountain National Park. And we actually have a YouTube video to a webinar on microplastics with Dr. James Ranville from the Colorado School of Mines titled "It's Raining Plastic, Now What?" And the National Geographic magazine also did a really amazing expose on microplastics. And this is a picture of a water flea. And if you see here closely, like the glowing green bits that it has in its stomach, those are the microplastics. And it's actually said that humans are ingesting 1 credit card worth of plastics every week. Microplastics have become so ingrained in our water, in our air, in our soil, in our food, that we have it inside of us too. And this water flea has it inside of it. Like, how crazy is that? So what about the rest? There are film plastics that can be recycled in separate collections. There are a couple of companies that buy back this film plastic and they melt it and make it into fake wood, like composite wood decking. So like Trex is one of those companies that buys back this plastic film and makes it into that product. Junk plastics are 3s, 6s, and 7s, and we'll touch base in a little bit in the next slide. And then there's also commercially compostable. So here's like the crazy thing, like you really have to read the resin identification code because this is number 7, PLA. The way that I remember that PLA is commercially compostable is that I think of plant. So PLA, plant, that can be composted, versus number 7, other. And the other really is an other. It's all of the above type of chemical compositions for plastics. So this PowerPoint will be made available to you as well, and you're free to click on the different links, but I've linked to the Eco-Cycle Plastic Pocket Guide. And here we really say, number 1, avoiding plastic beats recycling plastics. And number 2, all plastics can leach chemicals under certain conditions, but the ones to really avoid are 3s, 6s, and 7s because they are the most harmful to the environment and to human health. So number 3, PVC, which is where we are getting all of our water from, releases carcinogenic dioxins into the environment when it's manufactured or incinerated and can leach phthalates with use. So that's something to keep in mind. Number 6 is one of like the grossest kinds of like chemical composition plastics that there is. It can leach styrene, which is a possible human carcinogen. And number 7, polycarbonate. So here's number 7, PC. So that's not even other or not even PLA. This is number 7, PC. Can leach bisphenol A, a known human disruptor. So yeah, I mean, yeah, all plastics can leach chemicals under certain conditions. And again, avoiding plastics beats recycling plastics. And only 9% of all of the plastics ever created has been recycled. Why? It's because there are really no end markets. Very few people want to buy it. And it's tough economics. Since the oil and gas industry is so heavily subsidized, it's actually easier for the oil and gas industry to create plastics from the virgin source than it is to separate it, clean it, make it into pellets, melt those pellets, and make it into something else again. So the economics aren't quite there. It's expensive to sort. There are very high levels of contamination with plastics, especially. There's a lot of food residue and like water and liquid residue as well. There's way too many different types, and it's growing. The material degrades in quality. There's a lot of confusion around plastics and recycling. And there are a lot of places that aren't even collecting it. But again, why collect it when there are really no end markets that want this material? So let's talk about some current policies from federal to statewide and local initiatives. So in the federal policies, there are actually a lot. There are a lot of national policies directly relating to recycling. We're going to talk more about the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which is one of the biggest ones that we have nationwide. But there are also things to look out for, like the Recover Act, the Recycle Act, the Zero Waste Act, the Clean Future Act, and even the Plastic Waste Reduction and Recycling Act. But with the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, they are actually proposing an extended producer responsibility program. Extended producer responsibility is where the manufacturer of the item is in charge of dealing with the item. They have to buy it back, or they have to have the infrastructure in order for them to responsibly dispose of that material or recycle it. So they're looking at that for packaging and paper products. They're also looking at a nationwide bottle bill. If you've ever lived in a state where you buy a aluminum can or a plastic bottle or a glass bottle, you can take it back to the grocery store. It could be 5 or 10 cents. And then your money adds up, and then you take that receipt to the cashier, and then cashier will give you the money for the amount of materials that you brought in. It's also proposing different bans on plastic bags, styrofoam, single-use toiletries, and non-compostable produce stickers. So that's actually a huge problem in our compost right now that you should definitely look out for, are all those fruit stickers. I feel like cuties are in season right now because I see them everywhere and they are all in this mesh bag. But even when I opened up the mesh bag, some of the cuties had stickers. Why? That doesn't make sense for cuties to have stickers if they're all already encompassed in this mesh bag. It's just very, I don't know. If you are the responsible person for your household's composting and recycling, please do everyone a favor and just take out all of the produce and fruit stickers before you leave it out for your family, because there are a lot of people that aren't so detail oriented and will just put a banana peel with the sticker on there, and the sticker is plastic, and plastic never fully degrades. It only turns into smaller and smaller pieces, and this is one of the reasons why we have a lot of plastic in our soil as well. They're proposing standardized product labeling and collection systems, a moratorium on building new plastics facilities. There's actually, I said I was going to look this up, but I didn't. There's a place, I think it's along Mississippi, where there are a lot of plastic manufacturers, and the river there is called Cancer Alley because everyone around that area develops cancer because of all of the chemicals that are being emitted into the water and into the air and soil in the nearby community. And it also proposes a restriction on exports for recyclable materials. So again, once you have the PowerPoint, you can track the bill here and you can learn more about it here. So with the Colorado legislation, in the past couple of years have been monumental when it comes to our zero waste infrastructure. In 2019, we passed the Front Range Waste Diversion Enterprise, which charges 50 cents out of every ton landfilled over 4 years, creating a dedicated funding source to support community programs, all aimed with advancing zero waste. So this past RFP was on construction and demolition recycling, and the one before that was on increasing composting infrastructure in Colorado, which was really cool that we have this pot of money to help businesses that are starting out or businesses that are already existent with funds to increase their capacity. and therefore increase services to everyone in Colorado, in particular the Front Range, because that is where 80% of our waste is generated. And in 2020, we passed the End Market Development Center. And so there are current talks about what an End Market Development Center is and what it should do and what it should look like in Colorado. CDPHE, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, is looking into producer responsibility literature review as well. This bill also gives some property tax reimbursements to businesses to encourage end markets like Momentum coming in and really establishing themselves within the community and not be overburdened by the high property taxes that they have to pay. And also a statewide education campaign on recycling. Here's a little bit more about EPR. Our first EPR here in Colorado, and yes, we do have one, it's on paint. With paint, you pay a couple of cents when you buy paint, and you're automatically paying for the responsible disposal of that paint afterwards. There are a ton of different drop-off locations, mainly at Sherwin-Williams, where you can just go and drop your paint off for free, and then they take charge of responsibly getting rid of that paint. Other benefits of EPR is that it eliminates the additional fee that residents currently pay for at curbside recycling. It expands equitable access to recycling for everyone, provides convenient access to recycling, increases our overall recycling rate, and reduces climate pollution and boosts our local economies. There are a ton of pluses here, and you can definitely learn more on Eco-Cycle's YouTube page. We have a full 2-hour class on extended producer responsibility, so you can learn a lot more there too. What we currently have right now is the Management of Plastics Product, or the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act, in the state ledge right now in Colorado. And it used to do 3 things. It would ban styrofoam, it would ban plastic bags at the grocery store and have a fee on paper bags. And it used to lift the ban on banning plastics. So Colorado has a ban on banning plastics, and a lot of other states have that too. That was part of the plastic industry's big lobbying movement and efforts, where they passed this under the cover of, no, we have to put a ban on banning plastics because we want to ensure that plastics are recyclable and that they will remain as a viable material to be recycled. Again, very tricky, like master wordsmith folks. I don't know, but they, when this was over in the finance committee, they decided to amend it out. So that is why it's struck out. Don't ask me why. I have to ask, I think, another 3 more times just to get it through my head as to why that was nixed out. But now the actual legislation would ban styrofoam and ban plastic bags and put a fee on paper bags. There are local cities that are doing that as well right now. So Denver's disposable bag fee is at 10 cents on paper and plastic bags at the grocery store. That will start in July 2021. But there are other states that have banned the bags, and they're smaller cities. So the state is not going after them or suing the cities for banning plastic bags. So they're kind of flying under the radar right now, since it is technically illegal to ban bags. And then the cities here in green, they have a bag ban plus a fee on paper bags. Another local solution and action is the climate action tax. So in 2018, a group of climate activists called Resilient Denver had a goal of funding climate action in Denver and introduced a ballot initiative, which was an energy tax, which is roughly $1 per person per household. And it charged commercial and industrial a fee that's higher than the residential area. And they also proposed to merge the Office of Sustainability with the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment's Climate Action Team. They collected signatures but fell short 1,000 signatures from the due date, but they worked with City Council throughout the entire process, and City Council instead offered to create the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. So they merged the Office of Sustainability with DDPHE's Climate Action Team. they created the Climate Action Task Force to review the ballot initiative and come to consensus on whether to propose the initiative on the 2020 ballot or not. And the mayor gave $8 million for climate action. So the Climate Action Task Force could not come to consensus on the energy tax because of equity concerns. There was half the group said, yes, we should charge residents and businesses, and the other half group said, no, we should only charge businesses. So there was no consensus achieved. And instead, they decided to put forth the climate action tax, which was approved by City Council to be put on the November 2020 ballot. And that is a 0.25% sales tax increase, which would roughly generate $35 to $40 million a year. And 50% of that money has to go to underserved communities. So the climate action tax, as I mentioned, 50% has to go to underserved communities. That revenue is going directly into the CASR office, Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. And they have formed a Sustainability Advisory Council with 6 committees. These are the 6 committees. There's a science, energy, resource management, buildings and homes, sustainable transportation, and community adaptation, resiliency, and environmental justice. They're calling it CARE-J, CAREJ. So I love that. And so there are 2 co-chairs from each of the 6 committees that make up the Sustainability Advisory Council, which provides oversight into the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency, which then has the authority to spend the money on climate action solutions in Denver. You can watch their meetings on CASR's Facebook page, so don't miss out on that. So another quick question for you all. What is Colorado's diversion rate? So out of 100% of our trash, how much is being recycled and composted and how much is being buried? That is diversion, the amount that's being recycled and composted, because it's being diverted from the landfill. We have around 70% participation right now. All right, and we'll stop at 75% participation. So most folks said 26%. The second highest number is 16%, and the third is 36%. So let's see here. It is actually 16%. Colorado is one of the worst states at recycling because we have so much land to bury all of this stuff. And as you remember from earlier on in the conversation, it costs $16 to $45 to bury 1 ton of waste here. So it's very, very cheap to bury waste here in Colorado. There are different obstacles for that. So again, it's cheap to bury waste here in Colorado, whereas the average landfill rate is $55 a ton. It's higher in the East and West Coast where they don't have land, and it's even higher in Europe. And then there's a bunch of economies of scales in small towns with low populations as well that makes it more expensive to provide services for rural communities. And in rural communities, really it's the high cost of transportation. So they are way more isolated, and transportation is expensive. So over there, it's lack of infrastructure really, and we need more efficient transportation routes or systems to get all of the materials to the Front Range. And in the Front Range, it's really lack of policy. We don't have anything that says everyone must have a recycle cart as well as a trash cart. And good luck trying to get compost in places like Aurora or Littleton or other cities. Denver is actually very lucky to have compost service. The state has voluntary goals as well for diversion, for their diversion goals and rates. And there's limited funding and technical assistance. And trash and recycling is provided mostly by private companies, which can, again, skew the price of how much someone is being charged for trash and recycling. So trash is normally a number. Then if you want to recycle, they'll charge you more. They don't have it bundled already. And what's worse is that in open markets, most of the cities here in Colorado have open markets, meaning anyone with a waste truck can come in and provide services. Then anyone within that city can choose whoever waste provider they want. And that skews prices negatively for consumers because, say, company A only has 10% of the entire city and company B has, I don't know, 20%. And so company B can offer lower prices than company A because company A has to make it worth their while to come to your community and to pick up the trash and or recycling services from your community. And that's how you get a bunch of trucks driving up and down the roads every single day. Or like in my neighborhood, I'm in Aurora, trash comes 3 days a week. Trash and recycling comes 3 days a week. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit all over the place. So it's policy. You can learn more about the state of recycling with this report. Fun fact, Colorado's recycling rate actually dropped to 16% in 2019. It used to be 17.2% in 2018. It talks about the cities leading the way in terms of policy and recycling programs. It talks a little bit about EPR policies. But really the thing to know is that increasing composting is a thing that's really going to increase our diversion rate. And again, composting is a climate solution. It's the cheapest climate solution that we can do today that everyone can have access to. So here's the call to action. Be a recycling superhero. We could be recycling about 80% of our current waste stream. Refuse, reduce, reuse, repair instead. So buy secondhand clothes and look for natural fibers. There has been a boom in fast fashion, and fast fashion really is equal to synthetic fibers, which are made from plastics. So that's the polyester, acrylics, all of that nasty stuff that will never degrade and will only turn into smaller and smaller pieces and end up in our water. Mend your clothes as much as you can, adopt a zero waste lifestyle. You can use all sorts of swaps for your plastic items. So I've linked to Colorado zero waste stores and linked to where you can compost in case you are not in Denver and lucky enough to have the compost service. And there's even a how to quit plastics workbook here. It's all about doing a waste audit and seeing what's in your trash, what's in your recycling to start to analyze your consumer behaviors and see if there's a zero waste swap for that or not. You can stay informed, sign up for our policy newsletter where we let you know what's going on with the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act here in Colorado. You can partake in easy actions like signing on to letters of support sent directly to your legislators. And lastly, you can support our Zero Waste Denver campaign. So this is the last poll for today. Let me see here, oops. What is Denver's diversion rate? Is it 24%, 34%, 44%, or 64%? So out of 100% of the waste that Denver residents like you in 7 units and below, single family Denver residents are creating, how much is being recycled and composted and how much is being landfilled? Actually, no, just how much is being recycled and composted. That's diversion. Then you can do the math to see how much is being landfilled. All right, we have around 70% participation right now. Let's see the results. 73% of you said 24% and 27% of you said 34%. The answer is 24%. 34% is the national average. So we're not even average. And people here in Denver say, oh yeah, Denver's so green, Denver is so sustainable, but we're not. We don't have the right policies in place. And that's why part of our Zero Waste Denver campaign, we are advocates for the proposal pay as you throw, which is where recycling and composting is the base or standard trash service. And trash is charged for based on the amount that's sent to the landfill. So right now, trash and recycling are included at no additional cost because folks are paying into property taxes and sales taxes. So that's going into the general fund. And instead of general fund money paying for things like, I don't know, more bike lanes or like things that would benefit the entire city of Denver, 18 to $33 million is going towards free trash services for those in 7 units and below. So that's not even everyone in Denver. But we think recycling and composting should be the thing that's provided at no additional charge, and trash should be the thing that's charged for based on the amount that you bury every month. So the smallest trash bin would be the cheapest, the medium one would be a little bit more expensive, and the largest one would be the most expensive, therefore creating the right incentive and behavior change. This also creates an enterprise fund for waste in Denver, which again would free up millions of dollars from the general fund to provide quality of life services or improve services in the city of Denver, or things like bike lanes. So the thing about this is that the actions that address the environment and global warming are long-term solutions. Too long, we're all just so used to short-term solutions, but we really have to start looking at the long-term solutions here. And we must take action now, even though we might not see immediate dramatic results. One way, and the easiest way to start, is through zero waste, which is the easiest climate solution we can all do today. If only we all had that compost service that everyone in Denver is lucky enough to have. Here in Aurora, I have to use a third-party compost provider, and I'm not lucky enough to have the waste truck come over to my house and pick it up from there. And I can only do food waste composting too. I'm not lucky enough to be able to put my yard waste in my compost bin and have it picked up. So you guys are super lucky, yet you only have 20% participation rate. I really hope that you can increase your compost participation rate because it's really an amazing service to have. So yeah, with that, thank you. Happy to take any questions right now. And I don't know who keeps drawing on the screen. Here's like a brand new yellow thing that came up. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Hi, everyone. What are your questions?
So I thought I'd start with the ones that we have in the chat, and then if people, after we do those, there's like 6 or 7 questions. So how much time do we have? 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
Okay, so let's see where we can get. And Jasmin, I know you have offered you'll give answers to these at some other point. The first question was on the education center. Do you have education programs in Denver as well as in Boulder, or is it limited to Boulder because it's their taxpayer money?
We have education services in Boulder because Eco-Cycle has been in Boulder and Boulder County since 1976. Our extent of what we do in Denver is limited to myself. With the campaigns department, working to create better waste policies like pay as you throw in Denver to start to move the needle and get more folks to participate in the right programs that will help increase our diversion rate. So no, we don't have the schools department specifically here in Denver, just the campaigns department.
Okay, and then a couple of like technical recycling questions. Are you supposed to leave the lids on plastic bottles or remove them? And what about metal lids on glass jars? They don't say anything. Are they recyclable? Those two.
Okay, so the main reason they say take your lids off is because too many people put in their soda, half full of soda, in the recycle bin. We don't want any food and we don't want any liquid in the recycle stream because we have people that work at the MRF and we don't want to attract insects or rodents that can come over and cause them harm. If your bottle is empty and it's a plastic lid on a plastic bottle, then you can put your plastic lid on there as long as it's empty. You have to think about this in terms of the machine. Once they come and pick up your recyclables from your house, they have to take it to the machine and dump it on the floor. A bobcat, a person with a bobcat, then has to come over, pick up all of the materials from the floor and feed it to the machine. Can the machine separate a metal lid from a glass container if they are together? The answer is no. They have to be separate. The machine has magnets to pick up the metal lid, and the glass will mostly like get crushed up too. So that's another common question that I get. Like, if I have broken glass, can I put it in there? It will break during the whole process of it going into the back of the car, or like the waste truck, and then going onto the floor of the recycling machine or the MRF. So that's fine. Don't worry about that. But think in terms of the machine. The machine has magnets to pick up metal, but it won't be able to pick it up, or maybe it will. I don't know if there's a glass container attached to it, but then the glass won't go where it needs to go. So think about it that way, if that
But
helps.
we can recycle the lids because they're metal, so put them in separately. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, or the better thing to do, honestly, is take it to a scrap metal recycler. So what I normally do is I collect all of that stuff. So like a beer bottle lid cap, that's metal, or even like these lids can sometimes just go off to the wrong place. They can easily go off with the paper because it's more of a 2D item than a 3D item. So those are definitely the nuances of it. You can definitely cross your fingers and hope that the magnets pick up the metal lid instead of it going with the paper. But yeah, ideally scrap metal recycler. The Denver's recycling facilities have a palm rule. If it's bigger than your palm, it will definitely make it through the machine and make it with its like items. If it's smaller than your palm, that's where things get dicey. Even if it's something like cutlery, that's technically longer or as long as your palm, but it doesn't have the width. So that's where you have the examples of things literally getting lost in between the cracks of the machine.
Okay, and then what about the plastic lid on a water bottle that you said not to keep it on because people will have soda in it? But if it's separate, can that go in, or is it too tiny?
Is it bigger than your palm?
No.
Then no, that's your answer. So you have to ask yourself these questions. But if the bottle is empty, you can, and it's plastic on plastic, you can leave it in there together. But again, they mainly say no lids because it's filled with water or filled with soda or filled with something else.
Great, that's really useful. I couldn't find that on the Denver website, so that's great. There's a question here about food waste and whether some of the sustainability education that you're undertaking includes coaching people on smarter shopping so that they're not wasting food, or is that a completely different issue?
So I actually had a training on save money and reduce food waste yesterday. Thankfully, it was recorded. I think it'll be on our Eco-Cycle YouTube page. So look out for that in the next coming days, or to be safe a week.
Thank you for that. Actually, somebody said there's a great video on your site answering that very topic. So thank you, Renee. Okay, and then if you may not know this, but Lowry's over 50% multi-unit. And we're wondering what are some of the best third-party composting companies that pick up and are available for people in multifamily developments or restaurants to use. Do you have some recommendations?
Yeah, there's Scrap Smile High, Denver Compost Collective, Compost Colorado. Those are the top 3 main ones. I feel like I'm missing. There's Lone Tree Composting, but that's over in the Parker area. And there's also Wompost, which is started in Aurora, but they have expanded a little bit. So I think they are also in the Lowry area. So it's like compost with a W, Wompost.
Are those fee for service?
Scrap Smile High. Sorry, go ahead.
Are those fee for service, or do these compost companies pick it up just out of the material?
It's a business, so they have to charge
Okay.
to pick it up. for drop-off locations, for the actual workers going over to the site and picking it up, for actually turning it into the compost. So yeah, it has a charge.
I didn't get all those down, but maybe you can follow up on that with us. So I think there's a couple more that have come in. Oh, somebody wrote home fill. No, that's a sales. Let's see.
Home fill is a zero waste market.
What about the plastic lids on yogurt containers?
Those are usually trash. They're far too 2D, so we'll definitely go in with the paper.
Okay. All right. Somebody's suggesting putting metal lids into another metal can and squeezing it closed. But I seem to have heard that you're saying sometimes the metal lids are really scrap metal. They're not the same as the lid that you take off a soup can. Or are they all the same?
For the lids from like actual cans, I never fully break it all the way. So when I take my can opener, I leave it attached. And so that way that lid can get recycled. The thing about putting other metals within a metal can is that we're not sure, or you might not be sure if it's steel or tin. So that's the thing.
How do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, there's one more question on foil lids that you peel off like a glass yogurt jar. Could that foil?
Yeah, so with foil, you can make a ball with all of your foil pieces. And it just has to be 2 inches in diameter for the magnets to be able to pick it up. And it's usually aluminum foil, so it'll be picked up by the eddy current separator.
Okay, I think I got most of the questions in the chat, but how about we open it up for people to raise their hand if they have comment or question for Jasmin? This has been wonderful, although I think we could probably keep you here all day asking detailed questions. Does anybody else want to raise their hand and say something? Okay.
Has any analysis been done on how much does not make it through the sorter and what they do with that? Does it just go to the landfill, or does it go to a different higher precision sorter so that they can get recyclable materials and then process those?
Depends. What I heard from the Denver recycling facilities is that 10 to 20% is considered contamination and goes to the landfill. If they separate some stuff and see that there's a lot of recyclable materials, then they can very well reintroduce it back into the first area where all of the material is introduced into the machine.
Okay, thanks.
Does that answer your question, Richard?
Sure did.
Okay. Yes, is that Joe? Yeah.
It is Joe, yeah. And I posted it, maybe it didn't show up, but should we be removing self-adhesive labels and self-adhesive stamps from mail and other paper products before recycling them?
Good question. The answer is no. And that is because at the paper facility, someone had said, when I asked about what's the second closed loop in Colorado, folks are saying paper will never be a closed loop in Colorado because it requires so much water. And yeah. So when paper gets made into that pulp, there are different screens at the paper facility or at the paper mill that will take out tape pieces, and there are even magnets that will take out staples and paper clips, things that have gone through like that.
That's great. Thank
I
you.
see another hand, but I don't know your first name, D. Moore.
It's actually John. That was my wife's name. Quick question. We've got these like renewable, it claims Renew Liner. It says it's #1 recyclable PETreecycles.org. It says that we can put it in the curbside recycling. Do you know if that's okay or?
Is it plastic film? Because it looks like it's a little bit like plastic film, right?
It's like a plastic film with like a plastic insulation sandwich.
Yeah. So those can be recycled in hard to recycle places. So Sustainability Recycling in South Denver is the nearest hard to recycle place. They'll normally have a website on those packets saying like, go to howtorecycle.info or something like that to find out where you can recycle this, but it's not accepted in the single stream recycling because again, that is more along the paper or plastic bags, which, you know, can get rolled up in wind or gust and then no, we don't separate that at the machine. At the machine, like recycling is not broken. We always say we have a packaging problem and a plastics problem, not recycling. Like recycling is alive and thriving, but it's only for like metals and paper and glass. Plastics, as you heard from this presentation, it has very limited end markets. So.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I see one from Barb and Shannon. Barb, do you want to go?
Yeah, my question was, what about styrofoam? Does that go to that sustainability center in South Denver?
I don't know if they're taking in styrofoam or not. I don't think so. I know CHARM, the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials in Boulder, is. And it's only because we have a styrofoam condenser. It's this big machine where you put in all of the styrofoam and uses heat to condense the styrofoam as much as possible. And then that gets transported to different markets, which would take that styrofoam and make it into the dollar store, like plastic picture frames or crown molding. So
I think in the recycling presentation that we had a couple of years ago, it was said that the big, thick styrofoam packaging that comes out in large blocks, like you would get from a television or from a bicycle or something like that, as long as you don't break it up and put it in, they can recycle that because it just drops out. But small stuff, they don't want.
Wait, they can recycle.
Yeah, so no styrofoam peanuts, none of that like gooey type styrofoam, definitely no to-go containers for food because it's dirty. So yes, you're right, just the hard blocks of styrofoam that keep your whatever you just bought from getting damaged.
But let me clarify, that can go in your bin or that can go in one of the special recycling centers.
It's a hard to recycle material.
Thank you. Okay, don't put styrofoam in your bin.
Well, GFL is taking big styrofoam blocks. You can drop that at the Cherry Creek transfer station still. And that's going to Green for Life. So here in Denver, if you're taking it to the Cherry Creek transfer station, you can drop your styrofoam there.
Yeah, I just didn't want people to hear that it could be recycled in their bin. Am I correct on that?
So technically, Denver does have the contract to take all of their recycling to GFL's Green for Life's machine recycling facility. And since they do have the ability to separate it, I'm not 1,000% sure if the people working there are actively looking to separate styrofoam or if it's just the drop off over at GFL so that it doesn't make it through the machine, because the machine definitely does not have the ability to separate the styrofoam blocks. It would be a person that would be doing that. And it kind of depends on how much contamination is there. As I mentioned, I saw football players, whatever that thing is called, or like a barbell, or there are a ton of different things that come by the recycling facility that can damage the machine, like Christmas lights and hoses, like anything that can tangle up the machine and ruin it. That's the person's job, is to look out for these things and to separate it. So not sure is the answer. Call GFL.
I just want to put a plug in for Denver Recycles. First of all, you can go on the website and look up and put anything in the compost to check. There's lots of ways to check. Same thing, like foil wrapping paper doesn't count in a certain way. So all that is online, and they also have a Facebook site, and you can submit a question, which I've done, and they will answer eventually. But
They also have an amazing
So,
recycling
Chris,
directory.
S. Shannon, I don't know your first name. I'm sorry.
let's do one more question because we're.
I have a
Oh,
question for you.
okay. One question. And then,
I have a question.
well, let Shannon go.
Okay, 2 more questions because Mr. Head here has had his hand up for a while.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
Oh, yeah, you just blowing me off there, Chris. Hey, one of the things that we do is we take the plastic bags and the supermarket bags, etc., and we take them back over to the supermarket in those bins. And I also get a lot of Amazon packages with the bubble wrap, and I cut the paper label off of it and stick it in there, and I take them over to there. So what happens to that stuff? And is it really worth doing?
Well, that would be a question for the store's managers because theoretically they should have some sort of account where they are taking that
Well,
plastic
they are
film.
taking it. They have a big bin, and they're
Yeah.
saying they're recycling. I just wonder if you knew anything
Yeah.
more about that.
Well, that's why you should call them because each place might have a different contract. But the places that are buying back that plastic film are companies like Trex that are taking that plastic film, melting it, and making it into that wood composite decking.
Okay. Also, by the way, the Denver landfill does have a methane recovery because we visited it and they've actually got generators, etc. So that one they are actually doing that.
Yes, most do. But again, out of the lifespan of a landfill, it's only about 20% that's being captured. And so the better way is using a biogas digester because it's a more controlled environment versus an actual trash mountain where that's happening. Plus, the methane is not 100% clean because think of every single thing that anyone's ever thrown in the trash versus at a biogas digester, it's only organic materials that are going in there, therefore creating a cleaner methane. So I'm all for methane gas. It's just
I'm just saying they have a number of generators and they're piping the stuff out of the landfill when we did the trash tour a couple years ago.
Yep. But 20% of the full capacity.
Okay, one more question.
S. Shannon may not know that she has her hand up, but so I guess or how to unmute on a phone, I think it's *6. All right, Kathy, I think we're done then.
Okay.
I just unmuted. Could I ask my question?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for all of this. This is great information. Quick question. I use the plastic bags I get from King Soopers to wrap things that don't soil my plastic trash bin. What is a better option? Because if I didn't use that, I'd be washing it out to avoid insects and rats and mice and stuff from being attracted to that food. What is a better option than the plastic bag that I wrap things in, hermetically sealing? Does that make sense? I mean,
if you're talking about food waste, I would say the better option is compost instead, because that material is being turned into methane gas at the landfill, which is worse for the environment than it would be to compost it and create healthy soil instead. And that can help the environment a whole lot more.
Sure.
So I would say that. But I mean, if you just have like a regular trash liner, I mean, all your food should be fine there unless I guess you're like double bagging it. Just to
no, but that's a plastic trash liner, right? A liner is plastic. I guess I'm just trying to eliminate any plastic. Is paper better to keep it sanitary and away from pests? Does that make sense? Until waste management comes.
Yeah, the best way to do would be to freeze all of your food waste. If you're really worried about pests and mice coming over, you could theoretically do it in a paper bag. there are compostable bags as well. But again, if you're going through the trouble of doing all of that, you might as well just put it in the compost bin instead of the trash bin.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
Cool.
all
Thanks for
right.
having-
Well, this has been amazing. Jasmin, thank you so much.
Very informative. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you all.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
organizing it. And let's do this again next year. I'm sure the information gets updated.
That's right, and anniversary of Earth Day.
Good idea.
Okay.
Best to
And if
everybody.
anybody wants to talk to me about a sustainability committee in Lowry, send me an email.
Who's speaking?
Kathy. Oh,
Kathy, just give your email again, maybe?
okay. Kathy had KATHYHEAD, the number 1 at Comcast.net.
And I don't know if you were on before, but Kathy is a co-chair of LUN with Carla McConnell, who I know she's on vacation, but I thought I saw her here. And you can also just reply to the emails. And Denny, did you want to give out the new email address for LUN?
I don't have it in front of me, sorry.
Okay, all right.
But if you have it, you can feel free.
And Richard, if you're interested, I'll get you in touch with Kathy.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we'll see. Work schedules
Yeah.
are changing, so it's always a possibility.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank
This
you,
report
everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
put
Have a
on
good
the
evening,
Lowry
everybody.
website, just FYI. All right, bye everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Jasmin. Bye-bye.